Hey everybody, and welcome back to the DLF Trade Show on the I'm Going Too Far on the DLF YouTube channel. We are here yet again, so many in a row. I was about to say for the man, we got to be like 100 something weeks in. Like we've been doing this, what, 2-3 years at this point? It feels like.
I was wondering if
I remember last year, I was like, we've been doing this for what, like 4 or 5 months? You're like, dude, we've been doing this for a year and a half already. What are you talking about? And I'm like, no. But it's been a while.
There are 107 videos in the Dynasty Trade Show playlist on YouTube. So
at least for the 108th time, maybe in a row. Not in a row. I'm sure we took a week off.
No,
I'm tired. I gotta rest. This doesn't come easily. Like, this takes work. It needs no. Okay, well, we are talking about the older running backs that, okay, let's read for a little second the top of our show sheet that says old WTF RBs.
Yeah.
Because honestly, like, what do you do with some of these players? And is it worth trying to trade them away? Is it worth going to trade for them? That's the point of the show. Why am I saying that out loud? Let's just get to it. And the first one on the show sheet is Dalvin Cook. And I think this is a great way to start because on one hand, Minnesota didn't do anything.
They drafted, who was it? Dwayne McBride? Was that who they drafted in like the 7th round? That was basically it.
So Minnesota didn't do anything except for bring Alexander Mattison back, which I mean, I kind of saw coming. If everyone else thought he was going to go be a guy somewhere, sorry. So what is this backfield at this point? Is it just Dalvin Cook still going whenever he can and Mattison filling in? Is it going to be a bit more of a split? Nobody really knows. And I will say purely anecdotally, purely by what I saw, Cook was slowing down a little bit. He's not quite as spry as he used to be. And he's 27. He's been injured a few times. So it's to be a bit expected, but he's still good. And that offense is going to get better because they happen to bring in Jordan Addison, just that some little no-name guy. No, that nobody's heard of. No. So that offense in general, even if it does become more of a pass-heavy offense, will run better and, well, will flow better, and which is better for the running game as well. So I still think this is good for Cook. And let's just look at this first trade to me, which I got to be honest, this one actually feels a little respectful to Dalvin Cook. 12-team, 1 quarterback. Dalvin Cook in at 241 for the 111, a 24-second, and Michael Thomas. Now, again, this is 1 quarterback, and I feel like it might have been this show at some point where we just said, if you can get a first for Cook, you take it.
Yeah.
And while the 111 does get pushed back, like about a good 4 or 5 spots, based on this being 1 QB, not super flex, this is still really good to me. Like, I get it. The 111, you're probably talking something along the lines of Kendre Miller, who feels like almost a slot in right there. You know, or like maybe A-Chain falls a little bit. You can replenish your tight end position with one of the 3 to 5 tight ends that are getting drafted in the second. Like, the 24-second, which is great capital. And then Michael Thomas, like, he could be a thing. Like, I don't think it'll be a great thing, but he can probably fill in somewhere along the lines.
Weeks.
Yeah, so the total of that side is 279. Like, I, regardless of the position of my team, would heavily consider this trade. Like, even if I am competing, if someone offered me the 111 to 24-second and Michael Thomas, I think I take it and then see what I can do with that 111 and 24-second to see if I could move up.
Right.
Because if you can get to the point where you're getting, like, even if you make it to that Zay Flowers, Quentin Johnston area, which is around like the 6-ish, I think, without counting out loud because I'm too lazy for that right now. Like, I think that's a great move. And just even if you do draft the 111, there's a lot of moves you could do with that 24-second. And someone like Michael Thomas comes out and scores some points, you'll find a competing team that will want to give you maybe Michael Thomas in a third for a second, kind of deal. Like, so I think this is a really good move. And again, on the other side, I don't like I want to get Cook, and I love not giving up anything that feels like marquee piece is the wrong phrase because Dalvin Cook isn't really a marquee piece getting, but like it doesn't feel like you're giving up anything of the same level to go get Dalvin. But this feels like giving up too much value to me. Like I wish I could do this the 111 and Michael Thomas and not give out the second from the other side. Like I don't want to give this up to get Cook. I love getting Cook for this, but I love the idea of this.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's definitely a very fair trade, like just through and through. If you just wanted to go out and get a running back that most likely at this point, Dalvin Cook is probably your RB2, I would assume.
Hopefully.
I mean, the way that you and I build rosters, he's going to be our RB1 at these prices. But I feel like for a lot of people out there, you're buying Cook to be that RB2 that can give you RB1 weeks, but you already have like, you know, a Travis Etienne or a Ramondre Stevenson or maybe like a Saquon or a Breece Hall or somebody like that. And you just want that RB2 to come in. Dalvin Cook, I still think is a good running back. I mean, I agree with you that it looked like he slowed down last year, but like if you look at the stats, he had 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns last year.
It's
like
really good.
That's yeah. He played all 17 games. Now it is like he basically did that last year, or 2021 in like 13 games. So that's showing the drop off a little bit as he's getting a little bit older and stuff. And 2020 obviously was a monster season too. So this isn't the same Dalvin Cook, but I still think he has a workhorse role in this Vikings offense. I actually think it makes sense that he's staying with them this year because Kirk Cousins is on his final deal of his contract. What do they do with him after that? If they kind of want to keep their options open after this season, depending on what Kirk Cousins does, I think it would make sense that they would kind of give it one last go at it, you know, in the NFC, in a weak NFC, and just keep Dalvin Cook on the contract that he's at with one more year with Kirk Cousins, and then just kind of see what happens. Don't go all in like the Rams, but just keep Dalvin Cook and he can still be productive. And Alexander Mattison, like, I think that he'll have a role, but I don't think it's going to be all that much to really impact Cook on a weekly basis. I still think it's going to be Dalvin Cook because if you look at Madison's contract, it was only 2 years for $7 million. Like that was, he got $1 extra million than Jeff Wilson got. Jeff Wilson signed 2 for $6.
I'll take that $1 extra million. Just putting it out there.
Sure. I mean, but that Jeff Wilson got 2 for $6. Alexander Mattison got 2 for $7. And those guys have very widely different opinions in how we're viewing both of them as handcuffs or backup running backs. So I still think Dalvin Cook is the guy. I like buying him. He seems like the most secure running back of the video, like of the three that we're talking about in this video too. So I kind of like this from both sides.
All right, so let's move on to the next one. Dalvin Cook for Mike Evans and the 203. Dalvin Cook still at 240.7. Mike Evans at 197 and the 203 at 118 for a total of 316. For Mike Evans to do well, you don't need a good quarterback. You need a quarterback that's willing to throw to someone covered.
Right.
And while I know nothing of Kyle Trask, Baker does not seem to care if people are covered. And I'm going to assume for the moment that Baker is the starter right now. So I kind of like Mike Evans. By no means do I think he's going to do better than he has anytime recently, but I still think he could be a good low-end wide receiver too. And then we're talking, one quarterback adding the 203. I think I do this for Cook, especially because if you need to start multiple running backs, you want better running backs. But if you're starting 3 wide receivers, there's so many players you could fill in that third wide receiver spot that Evans is probably going to be at a very replaceable production level. If Dalvin is 80% Dalvin, he might be a very strong RB2 on your team. And I would pay this pretty easily, I think, to go get Dalvin. On the other hand, if I'm doing this the other way around, I think I want someone different than Evans, but I don't mind it.
That's essentially the breakdown that I had. I think if I were to choose a side on this one, I would take Dalvin Cook, even though the analyzer has it basically as a 75-point swing in favor of Mike Evans in the second. But it just doesn't seem like Mike Evans. Man, I would love to see some recent Mike Evans trades because I bet you they're all terrible. Because he feels like a dead asset that just nobody wants. and yet,
But he
like you
still scores
said, could
points.
still be a top 30, top 25 fantasy receiver. It's just nobody wants him. Like that's like the ugliest name that you could possibly say right now. So there is that, and I don't think that that's going to get any better either, because then next year
There's
he's
no
going to be
reason.
30.
Plus, he's 29.
Yeah. Like
it's not
he's
going
getting older. The quarterback situation sucks. We don't expect the Buccaneers to be good at all. I just like he's literally there's not going to be a lot separating him between him and Michael Thomas in a year, essentially. So I would take Dalvin Cook in this one. And yeah, I do agree. If you're trying to trade Dalvin Cook away, I don't know why you would want Mike Evans.
Even if, like, I get it, you're going to use a pick to bridge the gap in value, which is what they did here. But that doesn't mean you're not competing. Like, maybe you are competing. I still think you can probably get a little bit younger, but keep the same value. I don't have any of my DLFs. Oh, I do have. Of course, I have the trade analyzer open, so I can't.
What about Mike Williams? A different Mike.
No, I'd rather have Evans over Williams, just because I legitimately am worried of Quentin Johnson literally just taking his job.
What about Juju?
Love it.
All right. We are in. Would you do
like I'll take the risk on Rashad Bateman.
There you go.
You know, because there you're getting younger, and I still think have a similar floor, but what could be a much better ceiling. I'm not super worried about Zay Flowers just yet. You know, healthy Bateman has always done pretty well, and this should be a better offense. And before we move on, I need to talk about the fact that there's a little bit of change behind Addison's head.
There is.
That DeAndre Swift is no longer with us on the wall. We have put Chris Godwin up there, but I need to ask, is this just going to be a wall of 12s now?
Maybe, yeah. I just need a few more 12s and it'll be perfect.
I have a Seahawks 12s jersey upstairs. I'm going to sign it.
Okay, yeah. That works.
Put that right up there.
That'll be the most valuable jersey that I have on this wall. There you go.
Next player we have up is such a state of flux at the moment for Joe Mixon. Again, didn't look great last year. Definitely looked slowed down. It's tough when you look like you got that outplayed by Samaje Perine.
Especially when Joe Mixon is still not getting third down work.
Samaje Perine is just that good.
He's going to take Javonte Williams' job. Just outright.
Well, I'm telling you, Javonte Williams most likely won't be healthy at the beginning of the season, so we're going to see Samaje behind that offense. Workhorse Samaje. All right, so Joe Mixon still has a pretty respectable 261 in a 12-team one quarterback value. I have no idea what his standing is with that team right now. There has been the rumors of cap casualty, maybe restructuring, even though that hasn't seemed to happen yet. He goes, I still have no idea what the outcome of that maybe legal issue was. It goes away and comes back. I have no idea. But like, really, my biggest concern fantasy wise is what team is he going to be on? That matters a lot. And the fact that people like Zeke and Fournette, who probably by choice haven't signed up yet because they don't want to do OTAs, and I don't blame them at their age. But the first trade is Joe Mixon for a 24 first. Sorry, I guess at this point we're at the point where I need to specify a little bit. I can't do that. I cannot give up a 24 first for Joe Mixon. If it were September, we knew that Joe Mixon was the starting running back for the Bengals. Maybe then. I can't do that now.
Yeah, this one's weird, and I feel like you look at the trade analyzer and it says that Joe Mixon is winning this trade, or at the very least that it's very fair. But I feel like a lot of people out there are like, no way would I ever give up a first for Joe Mixon. And the reason why I put this in here was because this happened multiple times in the last like couple of weeks of like Joe Mixon for a 24 first, Mixon for a 24 first, Mixon in a third for a 24 first. And I'm like, why are people just throwing out 24 firsts for a running back that didn't look good last year. I get maybe they're looking at like fantasy points
They
because he
just
was
saw
like
that
a
one
top
game. Wait, this dude could put up 50 points in one
50
game? I got to
points?
give up my first for him.
He was like the RB8 or whatever last year in fantasy. And if you take away that 55-point game, he's like the RB like 19. But it's just I don't know why we're throwing out 24 firsts for Joe Mixon.
I
have been multiple times, multiple different leagues in the month of May. Wild.
I can usually find whether it is false or completely made up. I could usually find a reason why someone would do a trade. I got nothing on this one.
Would you sell Mixon for a 25 first?
Oh, yes. 100%.
Okay, just making sure there wasn't any. What about now? Leagues are you can trade 3 years out now, maybe in some leagues, 2026.
That's ridiculous. Look, if it was a league I run, I would take it and then just make sure that league lasted until 26. I will do whatever I need to do to make sure I get the payout of that.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I don't know if I trust that a league's going to last till 2026, which is ridiculous to trade 3 years out. That's way too much.
Yeah.
But I would still do it. Getting a first for Mixon at this point just feels like a win, regardless of how far out it is. Because people are trading 25 first right now. So just wait a couple of months and we'll start trading 26s like it's nothing. So anything with a 1.
What about a second? What if it was just a 24 second?
No.
You still take the second?
Yeah. I'd give a second for him, though.
If you were a contender and like not even if Joe Mixon was like, oh, he's like the last piece of the puzzle in my starting lineup.
If Joe Mixon was my first bench player, I'd still give
that. That's really what it is. Like you already have, 2 running backs that you feel very good about. Like you have Saquon, you have J.K. Dobbins, and then you have Rashad White, and you're like, I could send my 24 second for Joe Mixon.
Yeah, I'll give him the 212 for someone who has in his range of outcomes being a top 15 running back.
Top 10, maybe, apparently. Dude's scoring 55 fantasy points.
Yeah, like that dude's breaking fantasy football. Like maybe he was a little hurt. Maybe there was something that was for a reason he was slowed down again. They can make up excuses for anything. But like if he comes back and looks decent, absolutely worth a second. I still just even if I've won the past 3 years and every team has somehow gotten worse and my team has somehow gotten better, I still don't want to give up what I would know be the 24-112 for Mixon right now. Like I just don't want to do it. Yep. Will I do it? I mean, in that situation, probably. But clearly, I am not in any of those situations. Addison might be. He's better at this than I am. The next trade we have is 12-team Superflex, where Joe Mixon's value just plummets down to 125. Caution, Team B is giving up the highest value asset and the most pieces in the deal because the other side is Calvin Ridley and Gerald Everett. And, I mean, you don't even have to ask me what side I'm on.
So
Calvin
I knew
Ridley's
that you were
170, by the way. Calvin Ridley worth more than Joe Mixon.
Yeah, I knew that you were going to pick Ridley on this one, without a doubt, and I would probably too in most situations. But I do feel like this is a kind of trade where, not necessarily like viewing it as like an ROI on Ridley, but if you were somebody who bought Calvin Ridley through the past year and a half for like a third or whatever, just because you were like, well, I know his stock's going to increase when he comes back. He's my wide receiver like 5 or 6 right now. I don't think it's the worst thing to move him for Joe Mixon. I think that you would need Mixon plus, or at least if you're adding in Gerald Everett, I would definitely need something coming back with Joe Mixon as well too.
Gerald Mixon at 17.3 is a little rough. Like
Gerald Mixon,
nice. That's what I did. Gerald Everett at a 17.3. It's low. Like don't get me wrong, he wasn't setting any worlds on fire, but he was a pretty steady 8-ish to 10 points a game, and you need that at tight end at some point.
Wait, hold on a second. I think I got it.
What, Gerald Mixon?
No. I know what will set you on the Gerald Everett hype train. I'm waiting for my page to load.
I am scared, concerned, worried.
Would you like to take a guess as to who averaged more points per game last year? Gerald Everett or Kyle Pitts?
That doesn't. I am on record as saying that we can just forget Kyle Pitts even played last year, and I'm fine with that. Like, that year does not count because by the time that offense started to do anything whatsoever, they just benched him. Well, shelved him because they didn't bench him. He just like he
Would you
got
be
hurt early.
surprised to know that it was by over a full point per game more?
Yeah, it's a little surprising. The next player we have is another player that's a little bit of a iffy situation. Alvin Kamara. Still no word on what's going on about his legal issues as well.
Yeah.
He's on the team, at least. We know that. We know that he is on the Saints. I am not super concerned about Kendre Miller stealing his work. And again, Kamara.
He says that he could do pretty much the same thing. I'm literally looking at 3 different headlines right now on Alvin Kamara news where it says Kendre Miller feels he can step in and do pretty much the same thing as Alvin Kamara.
But no, I'm not worried. Kamara's going to be Kamara for another year. Again, he did look a little slower than normal towards the end of last year. He had one game where he put up 20-something points and it gave people hope a little bit, but he looked really not great at the end of last year. But I still think he has this season where he'll still have his role. And plus, the rest of that team isn't great in any way, shape, or form, so they're going to be on the field a lot. But let's see how we feel about these trades. 12-team Superflex, Amari Cooper and Alvin Kamara for Jameson Williams and a 24th third. Cooper at 200, Kamara at 118 for a total of 318. Jameson Williams at 208 and a 24th third for 48 points, so for a total of 258. And Jameson, another guy who is missing 6 games, even though at his age, who cares? I want Cooper and Kamara here. I'm not super thrilled about putting Kamara on my teams at this point because his value can literally just not go up from where it is. Being his age, being the fact that they did draft a running back, being that he's probably going to miss a couple of games at the beginning of the season. But when he gets on the field, he still should hopefully be all right. But I think Amari Cooper is going to be really good this year. And while I love aging down at wide receiver 6 years from Cooper to Williams, I'm still not sure how I feel about Jameson Williams in the long run. And the 24th third means absolutely nothing at this point. So I'm not trading Cooper and Kamara for Jamo. So I'll take your bets here.
Yep, I agree. I absolutely love this. I think that this is a perfect way to, especially if you're moving towards being competitive, moving Jameson Williams and getting a wide receiver who's most likely going to outscore. I mean, will definitely outscore him on a total points basis unless Cooper gets injured.
Yeah.
But also probably on a points per game basis as well too when Williams comes back. That's just money right there. And then you get the plus of Kamara, who has the potential still to be even if he's just a top 20 running back, that is totally way more than just what seems like a throw-in at this point on this deal. Even if he's a top 25 guy, I feel like maybe he's not someone that you feel comfortable throwing in every single week and you don't have to do that anymore. But you'd feel good about having Kamara as your RB3.
Yeah, you could line up shootout games and drop him in there and you'll probably feel good about it.
Yeah. And what if he starts coming back to one of the biggest problems that he's had over the last couple of years was he hasn't been catching as many passes as he was, when Drew Brees left, which I feel like we could kind of have assumed that was going to be the case anyway. But I mean, he had 4 straight years of over 80 receptions and then dropped down to 47 and then dropped down and then climbed up a little bit last year to 57. So it's still solid receiving volume, but if he were to be able to get back to that kind of volume while, Jamal Williams or Kendre Miller take more of the ground and pound volume, and Kamara is able to return back to being the sub 200 carry guy, but the 80 reception guy, even if the touchdown efficiency still isn't there, which I don't think it will be, but that alone is going to make him a top 15 guy just based on the receiving volume that he's getting, which I think is fully within the range of outcomes this year because they haven't had the reason why Kamara has gotten so much rushing volume lately is because they haven't had somebody to take that load away from him like they did with Mark Ingram back in the day, or so having Jamal Williams and having Kendre Miller I think is going to be
good for him.
Actually good for Alvin Kamara.
And while it's not the same offense, but he has the quarterback that Josh Jacobs had last year. Josh Jacobs had 60 targets, and while that would be a little low for prime Kamara, that wouldn't be bad.
Yeah, and that was on a team with, Devontae Adams. As like you're when you're going to throw
Slow
to
your
your
roll
Josh
on what
Jacobs
you're
or
about to say
Devontae
about
Adams.
Chris Olave. Just slow.
Well, Chris Olave is not Devontae Adams level of target hog alpha yet.
Fair enough. The last trade we have is the 202 and Alvin Kamara for Marquise Hollywood Brown. The 202 coming in at 128. Alvin Kamara still at 118 for a total of 246. Hollywood coming in at 192 by himself. So this is super flex. So at the 202, do I have my ADP up? I don't. So at the 202 in a super flex league, you're talking someone along the lines of Michael Mayer, Laporta, A-Chain if he falls a little bit, Kendre Miller, who we've been talking about, Roshan.
Mingo's in there, I think.
Well, Mingo is, please don't, the 207. Rashee Rice, the 206. Again, this is the 11 trade addicts leagues that I'm looking at. Let's hold on. Now I clicked away and I can't remember what the trade was. See, this is weird because you're getting Kamara if you're competing, but then you get the chance, and I get that Hollywood's only going to be 26, but you're re-rolling a little bit. If you can pull off Mingo and Kamara for Marquise Brown, I feel good about that. I like Hollywood Brown. Don't get me wrong. It's a shame he won't have Kyler at the beginning of the season, and especially when it seems like Hopkins is going to be on a new team. But I believe that just Hollywood's really good. Mm-hmm. And I get this trade from both sides. I get just giving up the 202. And again, it feels like Kamara's a bit of a throw in here. The 202, all right, fine. Maybe he should be worth a late first. So I'll throw in Kamara to push it up those 2 extra spots. That's what this feels like to me. And I think if I want to win, I think I do that because I get it. I really do think Hollywood's going to be very, very solid and again, give you spike weeks. But once Kyler comes back, and if he is coming back and is Kyler, we're going back to those first 6 weeks of the season last year where he was a top 5 wide receiver.
Yeah.
So I do this for Hollywood. I love the idea of getting a somewhat solid running back and a shiny new toy at the same time. So I think this is a very fair trade, but I think I side with Hollywood.
I've been team Hollywood all year, so I would also take this. This feels like the Calvin Ridley one, where it was if you had the wide receiver depth, and maybe if it was in you only have to start 2 wide receivers and maybe 1 flex, just kind of a base starting, number of players.
Yeah.
That one feels like it's a lot easier to move off of Hollywood. You still get a player that I think would feel good about it, 2.02.
Yeah.
And then you get Alvin, like you said, Kamara in these trades feels more like a throw-in. I think that's more of the crux of this part for Alvin Kamara here. It's just his value, and his ADP from May, he was the RB 33 behind Kendre Miller, AJ Dillon, and Brian Robinson, just ahead of Montgomery and Roshan. But
that's the apps. This is one of those definitions of why startup value and trade value don't really mix. He's old. He's going to fall in drafts. That is absolutely true. But this is too low for his trade value.
That's what, it seems like the trade value is even lower than that.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah, if you are fully on board with competing, even if you're I could compete, but I also could see that if a player or 2 don't hit, then I might not be competing, then don't buy Alvin Kamara. But if you're fully in for 2024, but you have your entire roster, Kamara.
Yeah, and look at these 2 trades that he brought up, and I kind of love these 2 trades, and the fact that if you have a player on your team that you're not necessarily sold on, if you have JMO on your team, pivot and then add in Kamara on the other side. It's right. It seems like that's what both of these words, I have Hollywood, maybe I do want to compete, or maybe I definitely just want to get younger. Okay, give me the 202, just throw in Kamara. Like it really feels like that's what both of these are. And I think that's a really good move, even if you aren't competing, because like it's a throw-in. So what are you gonna do? Get like a third thrown in? Whatever. Because if Kamara comes out and puts up 15, 20 points, even one out of the first 2, 3 games, you'll be able to flip him for a second somewhere in season, in point scoring season. So I definitely think it's zero risk, but it could be a decent reward, even if again you are just going to flip him and not take those points. I like it. Will I do it? But I like the idea.
I might do it. I might wait. What could happen is if we get some clarity on his suspension and we know like X number of games, I'm not sure if that would help or hurt his value. Like if you knew right now that he was suspended for 4 games, do you think that would raise or lower his value to you?
I think anything below 6 games at this point raises value, because
kind of a win.
Because Kamara at this point seems like a 1-year asset. He seems like something just for this season.
Mm-hmm.
Missing a third of a season is a lot. And it's the same, for Nuke last year, why his value was nothing until he came back on the field and just reminded everyone how good he was. It's going to be the same thing here. Like, it's going to be really, really hard to get any value whatsoever for Kamara. But once it's like, all right, well, I have him for a whole year. He's only missing like 3 games. No, I'm not even going to count that. I'll keep his value as if he were playing anyway, because the upside of what he can be, and especially because he could still practice, even if he's suspended, he can do off-season stuff until the season starts. So like if we see some like 7-on-7s or something, and he is just like burning people, his value might take a little bit of an increase, and that will kill the whole be able to flip for more later. But if you want to get the points, it might be a good time that the person is like, all right, now it might be worth trying to trade him away, because right now the person who has Kamara might not just feel like they're going to get anything worthwhile, which is definitely why they're not sending offers out, which is why see what you can get if you send something to them.
I like it. That's a good summation.
Yep. All right, and why go any further if I summed things up so well? This has been the DLF Trade Show on the DLF YouTube channel. Russ Fisher at Dynasty Outhouse, Addison Hayes at AmazeHayes_. We'll catch you next time.